The 636th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the arms. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Just Josh here with you guys tonight. Hubert Davis, he met with the media on Monday at the Smith Center ahead of the ACC opener tomorrow night against Florida State. We're here to recap that press conference that the head coach of the Tar Heels held earlier today. I've got, 6, 7 cuts that we'll run through really quickly as the head coach talked about some things he likes about his team, where he wants to see them improve, and did give us some background info on tomorrow's opponent, the Florida State Seminoles. Before we get to that, though, really quickly, let's run through the pod thought of the day. We'll go to Dale Carnegie for that thought, and that thought is, quote, "Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit at home and think about it. Go out and get busy," end quote. There's no doubt that this Carolina team is confident, and I think they're courageous enough to go out here and compete to win an ACC championship, something that was not expected of them. They were not picked to do so by the media, but fans like myself and you listening to this podcast hold them to that standard. And so, they're confident. They're 12-1. They're off to their best start since 2008, 2009. And now it's about being courageous enough to carry that confidence over into ACC play, which begins in full earnest on Tuesday with 18 straight league games ahead of the Tar Heels. Let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get into this edition of the podcast. As I mentioned, Hubert Davis, he met with the media earlier today at the Smith Center, and we got some quotes that I want to play for you guys. The first one is Hubert Davis was simply asked the areas his team can improve upon as they begin to enter league competition.
I think a number of things on both ends of the floor. From a defensive standpoint, just better at defending without fouling, better at keeping teams out of the paint, better at boxing out, not allowing second chance opportunities, trying to find ways to create more turnovers. That's something that we've done a very good job of defensively. Offensively, my hope is that we'll shoot the ball better from three, also from the free throw line. Just better execution, the little details, setting screens, being in the right spots, taking care of basketball, which we've done a really good job of late. But just continuing to grow and be consistent at those little things that I think make big things happen.
So there you go. And I think that's the one thing you got to like about where Carolina is at right now is, look, they've achieved a lot. They've got a handful of quad one wins. They're a top 20 team in the net, a top 25 team in KenPom, but they're not a finished product. There's areas where they can improve and they need to improve to become the best version of themselves. And that's got to be encouraging for a head coach to, have the record Carolina has. This is the best start for the program under Hubert Davis, but also you can identify areas where they can still improve and get better. And if they do that, then they can legitimately achieve their regular season goals and put themselves in a position to achieve things come postseason time, both in the ACC and the NCAA tournaments. The second piece of audio that we'll play is an area where Carolina has to improve dramatically, and that's free throw shooting. The Heels, just quite simply, after 13 games, they're not a good free throw shooting team. And Hubert Davis was asked how he's gone about addressing that with his team.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Other than make them. It's hard, obviously, one of the things that we've done is to, put that in practice, specific time, working on free throws. When I mean working on free throws, just continuing to stay consistent in terms of your free throw shooting routine, be confident, rhythm, and that's pretty much it. During the season, it's tricky to talk about not just free throw shooting, but your shot.
Yeah.
I just said the reason why I say that is for myself. When I played, I didn't want anyone talking to me about my shot, whether it was going in or wasn't going in. Let me figure it out. I don't need 50,000 voices telling me elbow in, take a deep breath, bend your knees, because that's the last thing that you need to do during the game. You got to play fast and free and be able to react. And so it's something that we've talked about, but it's not something that we've focused on, just to get our guys confident that when we get to the free throw line, we can be a team that consistently makes them.
And look, he's not lying. How you go about that is a very tricky thing. Because I think at this point, it's just a mental thing. Carolina's gone to the foul line so many times and went 1 of 2 or 0 for 2 or 0 for 1 in a 1-and-1 situation. Yes, you can look at film. You can break down maybe if there's a hitch in their shot or something like that. But the ball looks good coming out of Carolina's hands. Everyone's got a good form. It's just a matter of simply making them. And hopefully – they continue to do a fair number of free throw shooting drills and practice, and hopefully that at some point does carry over into ACC comp, because if this is the free throw shooting team Carolina is going to be, then they're going to maybe lose a game or two they should not lose. And that's the last thing you want to be a reason why you got beat, is because you didn't make your you didn't make your foul shots. And look, Carolina, with the amount of pressure they put on the rim, they're going to get there, and they're going to be there, 15, 20, 25 times a night. You need to shoot, 75% or better on those attempts to really put yourself in a position to win the games that you want to win and the games that you need to win as you now begin, an 18-game ACC slate. Another thing we've talked about a lot has been the perimeter shooting. Carolina not shooting a great percentage. But the shot selection has been very good, at least in the opinion of myself. I feel like Carolina gets really good looks the majority of the time. They just haven't gone down. Hubert Davis addressed the shot selection he's seen from his team from the perimeter.
Our looks are getting better. In regards to percentages, I think there's a number of factors. It could be something technical, whether it's elbow in or not getting your feet set, not being balanced, going straight up and down. But I also think a huge part of it is shot selection. It doesn't matter if you're a really, really great shooter. If you're not shooting good shots, it's not going to go in. And so just our growth in understanding what a good shot is compared to a great shot, and being able to be stubborn and persistent to be able to get those type of shots on every possession, I think will go a long way in regards to our percentages getting higher.
And look, at some point, the ball's got to go in the basket for us to say that this is a good shooting team. I think Carolina has the potential to be a good shooting team. I've seen the way that, Seth Trimble can shoot the ball, Kyan Evans, Luka Bogovac, Jonathan Powell. I mean, right now your best perimeter shooter is a 7-footer and Henry Vassar. That was not the expectation entering the season when Carolina went out and acquired shooting. That was one of the things they wanted to add to the roster that they did not have a year ago. And right now that has not translated, that has not shown up. But I do think that if they continue to get this quality of a shot, at some point they'll make them. And if they don't, then it just becomes, the proof would be in the pudding that they're not a good shooting team. Hopefully these numbers, they can kind of average out as we get here into ACC play. A lot of conversation's been around Kyan Evans. I don't think he's been the player that Carolina thought he was going to be from the scoring perspective. He is definitely underwhelmed in that category, but he does lead the team in assists. And when he stayed out of foul trouble, been a quality defender, if you will, for Carolina in the half court. Does a really good job, I think, trying to fight through ball screens, switching, so on and so forth. And, Andrew Jones asked a real great question about, what's different from what he's being asked of here at North Carolina as opposed to his previous stop at Colorado State.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a lead for us in regards to distributing the basketball, especially in transition. Obviously with, Seth back in the lineup, that the pitch aheads in transition, even after a made basket, allows us to play in primary break and be able to get layups and dunks, and deep post catch, and Kyan does a really good job of that. I think in regards to running the team, he's done a really nice job. But it is different in regards to having the ball in his hands a little bit more. I think one of the things for him is also moving him off the ball and using his ability to shoot the basketball, make plays coming off of flares, wide pins, being able to mix that up for him will put him even more in a better situation to be successful and consistent on the offensive end.
I think that's got to be something Hubert Davis has to be stubborn about starting with this Florida State game and moving forward. Carolina needs his scoring. They need it from the outside, and they need it with his ability to get to the rim and finish. That was what I was really impressed about when he transferred in, was that, he could shoot 38+% from the outside, but he was really good at Colorado State, getting into the painted area and finishing. Something that Carolina's guards last year, most notably, Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis, both those guys struggled to do. And so I do think when Carolina's in the half court, it's okay to move him off the ball, whether it's with Seth Trimble in the backcourt with him or with Derek Dixon. But, at some point we need him to score. The assisting is fantastic. I don't think that's going to go away because he's an unselfish player. He looks to pass first instead of score. But at some point, and I think he knows that he's got to put the ball in the basket. And look, when Carolina's played their best basketball, that was the 20 minutes against Kansas in the second half. That's the best basketball I think we've seen from Carolina so far this year. He scored all of his points in that game in the second half and scored 12. So you can see the importance and what it does for Carolina offensively when he is being a difference maker on that end of the floor. The last thing we'll talk about before we move on to a mini preview of the matchup with Florida State. Look, offensive rebounding has been a weakness for Carolina at times here in the first handful of games. It's definitely an area that they can improve upon despite being a top 10 team in the country in terms of defensive rebounds per game. And Hubert spoke about just the importance for his group to finish possessions with rebounds.
I think that's huge for us because that leads to our efficiency on the offensive end. It allows us to get out in transition, and finishing the defense is something that we talk about at great length, whatever it takes. A lot of times teams have slowed down their approach offensively, and we've had to play defense a majority of the shot clock. And one of the things that we talk about in the huddle all the time is whatever it takes, whether it's 5, 15, 30 seconds, whatever it takes to get a defensive stop. And so I always tell them it's not a Caleb and Henry and a Jared rebounding game. It's a UNC rebounding game. That goes to the part of being able to finish and understand, like, our guards, we've got good positional size, and our guards consistently need to get, 5, 6 rebounds to be able to help out. If we can start finishing our possessions, I think it'll also take us to a different level defensively.
We talked about it the very first comment that Hubert delivered. This is an area where Carolina can and needs to get better. And this is even with being a top 10 defensive rebounding team in the country. They gave up, a handful of offensive rebounds to East Carolina. A good number that, you let that happen against this Florida State team. When they offensive rebound, they're going to kick it out for threes. That's the best time to shoot a three, is after an offensive rebound while the defense is scrambling, trying to get back in position. And so, look, that between Wilson and Vassar, you're going to get, 18-plus rebounds a night. You could probably go ahead and put that number north of 20 because they're both walking, talking double-doubles at this point for Carolina. But Hubert's not wrong, man. You need that other consistent board getter. I think that Seth Trimble will become that because, he led Carolina in rebounding for the majority of the season a year ago. Jaron Stevenson, wonder what those numbers will look like now that he's moving to the bench. I bet it's per 40, though, would be really exceptional. Luka Bogovac, the same thing. Can you be a guy that consistently is getting 3, 4 rebounds? Because Carolina's got to get back to rebounding the ball and running off of misses. They've done a pretty good job, I think, running off of makes and advancing the ball up the floor. But when this program is operating at its highest level of offensive efficiency, it's when they're running off of misses and they're getting the ball and they're running as quickly down the court as you can. And, as you mentioned there with Kyan Evans and his pitch ahead ability, the more misses you get, the more chances he can just push the ball ahead to a running Seth Trimble, a cutting Jonathan Powell. And those guys are getting to the front of the rim for layups, dunks, or fouls. And all of a sudden your offense is easier. It's more efficient. It's more explosive. And Carolina's not struggling to score the way they have at some points here in the first 13 games of the season. 2 more sound bites to go. Both of them focus on the matchup with Florida State. That game comes your way Tuesday night, 7 p.m. from the Smith Center. That game will be televised over on ESPN2. And we will have coverage for you on the website and on the podcast and in person. Anthony will be making the trip. I sacrificed my credential for him to be able to go to this game because there was a couple games he was supposed to go to. He was not able to do so. So make sure you're following along with the Heel Tough Blog social pages for live updates throughout the ball game. But 2 quick comments from Hubert on Florida State, and then we'll get out of this edition of the podcast. We talked about it in the preview. They play an NBA style, meaning they want to shoot a lot of threes and they make a lot of threes. And Hubert just talked about in totality the challenges Florida State possess on offense for Carolina.
Yeah, they put a lot of pressure on you. They play at tremendous pace. I think their average possession is around 14, 15 seconds. They shoot, an average of 36 threes, which is second in the country. And so they got a number of guys that not only can take shots, but can get hot and hit multiple shots from 3. But they also, have the athleticism to be able, they may not take a lot of mid-range jump shots, but they do get points in the paint off of their penetration, whether it's in transition or a half court. So it's important for us to protect the paint, but also put us in a position where we can contest and be able to finish the possessions off those 3-point shots. But they put a lot of pressure on you offensively, spacing-wise, and it'll be a challenge for us defensively.
Look, Carolina's defensive numbers would suggest they're elite in terms of opponent field goal percentage overall, opponent field goal percentage from inside the 3-point line, where they are in KenPom. They were top 20 in KenPom entering to today's action. This is going to be a different test. Talent-wise, is this the most gifted offense that Carolina has been asked to slow down? No. From a scheme standpoint, though, this is going to be different. You're going to see a lot of NBA action. a lot of NBA sets, and a lot of three-pointers with a lot of spacing on the floor. So Carolina's got to be really good with their 4 and their 5s, making sure that they're communicating, switching, fighting over screens, and being able to contest all the amount of threes that Florida State wants to jack up. And so I think we'll really learn, if where Carolina is defensively after seeing a team like Florida State that plays the way they do on the offensive end of the floor. The last cut focuses more on Florida State defensively. Remember, under Leonard Hamilton, when he built them into really an ACC power the last handful of years he was on the job before the pandemic really, stopped all the momentum for that program. The Noles were big, they were tall, they were long, they were athletic. And, obviously you got Luke Laux in there running the program, an NBA guy that's now the head coach. And so Hubert was asked, kind of how they look and match up defensively with their length as compared to past Florida State teams.
Yeah, I mean, they've got great positional size, athleticism. They can do a number of things defensively. We expect to see everything, man zone, full court press, 3/4 court press, traps out of the press, different types of defenses, out of bounds underneath, man or zone, going back into a man or zone, zone side out of bounds. And what they do is a really good job of, creating chaos and getting deflections and steals. One thing I always tell the team is never let a defense dictate and decide how efficient we play on the offensive end. And so for us, irregardless of what Florida State does, which they do a terrific job of, being able to stay within our principles and being able to execute and just hit singles.
So there you go. He said it right there. They're great. They're active. They want to create deflections. That's an old, Red Holtzman stat that deflections, whoever deflected the ball more usually would go on to win the ball game. But, I do think it's going to be interesting because, as you mentioned, they'll play man and then they'll play zone in the same possession. How does Carolina handle that? How does Carolina react to that? I think will be a telltale sign of where Carolina's half-court offense is at, because they've done a good job attacking zone at times. There have been other times they've looked lost, but that was without Seth Trimble, someone they have now back in full force. And so this is the game Carolina should win. The ESPN analytics, favor them heavily with a nearly 88% chance going into the matchup. They opened up as 16.5-point favorites in this game as well, according to DraftKings. So this is a game that Carolina should win, but I do think they'll get contested, and we should be able to learn something about this team in their first ACC game of the year. One closing note before we do get out of this edition of the podcast: the ACC Network did announce that they will air a documentary about the 1993 National Championship team that'll come on January 10th. That's a Saturday night. It'll air at 8 p.m. over on the ACC Network right after Carolina and Wake Forest play. The Heels host the Demon Deacons at 6 p.m. that night. So, look, we've been begging the ACC Network to give us just more original content. I'd argue their documentary about the ACC tournament is some of the best work that ESPN, the ACC Network, have produced since the network launched all the way back in 2019. And now this is one of the latest things that you will that they're going to produce. Is obviously about Dean Smith's second and last national championship team. So an insight team to a team that I never got to see play in person, but have obviously read a lot about. And look, it's going to be, guys that are going to be featured in this will be, former Carolina players, George Lynch, Brian Reese, Derek Phelps, Donald Williams, the MOP of that Final Four, Henrik Rodel, Kelvin Salvadori, Matt Winstrom, Pat Sullivan, current assistant, Travis Stevenson, and Ed Geth. You will also hear from Dave Hanners, a longtime assistant at Carolina, Phil Ford, current SID, Steve Kirshner, and Ed Wills. You will also hear from some of Eric Montros's family, and including head coaches from that season. Dave Odom, Roy Williams, Jimmy King. Excuse me. And broadcasters Jay Billis and Mick Mixon. I apologize for the sneeze. I'm sure y'all been exposed to it. There's something going around, and I think it's kind of gotten to me. I've been battling a head cold now for the past 2 days, so I do sincerely apologize for that sneeze for you guys right there. But with that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website. That's HeelToughBlog.com. Full coverage of the Florida State game can be found on the website. I'll be getting you ready with the game preview, falling back with the game recap, while Anthony is on site in attendance representing the blog at the Smith Center. He also has you covered with Carolina football, some recruiting news coming down for Carolina in the 2027 class, but all eyes point towards Carolina hoping to make their offensive coordinator hire official in the form of Bobby Petrino, with the portal set to open on Friday. And I was told that, Carolina is in position to be a big playmaker this offseason in the transfer portal. We'll have you covered with all the guys that Carolina, either lands, talks to, so on and so forth. So go to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Your home for the best coverage of Carolina basketball and Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Everywhere you find your podcast, just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a visual consumer of the podcast, the best way to keep up, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. The second we go live, you will be notified. It'll be right there sent to your mobile device, and you can jump in and be a part of the conversation. But with that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank everybody once again for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.